Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back. In this video, we're looking at the MLB Draftkings and Fanduel picks for Monday. We have a 7-gamer starting at 7:05 today. So let's get started. I already posted the NBA picks. If you guys are going to be playing that, go ahead and touch on baseball in this video, hopefully. A lot better week of baseball this week. Last couple of days, the start of the season's been kind of down, but not worried about it at all. Just going to continue to stick to the process of baseball. Long season, things will end up like turning around very quickly. So let's look at the totals and stuff. Before we get into it, I always appreciate if you guys hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, if you guys enjoy the content, and let's get started. So on this slate, we don't have cores for the first time. I think like on all the main slates except for yesterday. Actually, we might have been on there yesterday. I can't remember. But no cores. We have a lot of teams with similar totals, so I think there's a lot of teams to potentially stack. You have a bunch of teams with the 4+5, close to 5 run total. The Rays are at 5 runs. The both the Brewers and the Cubs are over 4.7. We have both these Astros and Angels over 4.7. Have the Dodgers 4.8, the Padres 4.8. So all those teams are pretty similar in terms of like chances to go off on a stack. Today, I think you could look at some of these Giants against the lefty just because they're super cheap, and you have guys like Donovan Solano, Evan Longoria, Flores, Slater are all great lefty hitters. Posey's had a good start to the season, couple of home runs in his first couple games. So you can go to him as a cheap or as a catcher. He's not a cheap catcher, he's 3,800, but as a catcher who does have some power. So the Giants are probably the sneaky stack. And then I love the White Sox today against the lefty. They're probably my favorite stack on the slate if I had to rank all these teams. Like, I like the Padres, but going up against Descalfini, he's a lot worse against lefties, and there's just not a lot of lefties on the Padres except for Hosmer, who has a lot of power. So I would rather go to the White Sox, who have a ton of right-handed power going up against the lefty. Abreu mashes lefties. Anderson, if he's in the lineup, hits lefties really well. Robert has just a ton of power in general, and then you also have some cheap plays in there with like Vaughn, maybe Mercedes as a catcher option. I don't think I really want to go to the Dodgers too much, especially if they get a lot of ownership, just because they're going up against the Frankie Montas, who was really bad last year after he had a great 2019. And I would rather like kind of spend elsewhere. It's so really not a good ballpark to hit in. They're getting a big ballpark downgrade after they played their first series in Coors. Then I do like some Astros against the lefty, like Altuve's great against lefties, Bregman, Gurriel, Carlos Correa. That would be a 4-man stack I would consider. Angels, you look at like Jared Walsh as a cheap hitter at just $3,900. He looks appealing. Then you could go with always go with Trout if you wanted to, Rendon to fill out a small stack there. And I don't think I really have a ton of Rays. Like, I think Pavetta can have some strikeouts. He can also give some power, but I would probably rank it like White Sox are my favorite stack, followed by the Angels, then the Astros, then the Cubs, and then probably the Rays is how I would rank it. Going back to DraftKings pricing, I think you got to start with DeGrom. I mean, he has to be in your lineup today. We're getting a lot of these teams with their fourth and fifth game now, so we're seeing a lot of the fourth and fifth starters on the team, all except for the Mets because they haven't played a game yet with the COVID issues in their first series. So you're getting the ace, the only ace on the slate here in DeGrom, one of the best pitchers in baseball. You got to play him against Philly. And then the second pitcher I like is like not a lot of guys look that appealing. Probably Dustin May looks appealing just because if you look at his numbers, he's really, really good against righties and should get around 5, maybe 6 righties in the lineup here. For the A's, it's a great ballpark to pitch in as well in the Coliseum. So looking at Dustin May, he played really well in the spring to kind of beat out some other guys for the final spot in the starting lineup or in the starting rotation. Last year, he gave just a 182 average, just a 291 slugging to righties. 2019 was back when, small sample size, only 59 batters faced. So look at his career numbers against righties, and they're pretty similar to both sides of the plate, but his strikeouts are a lot higher. The xFIP is a little bit lower. The walk is lower. So I do like him against the potential righty-heavy Oakland A's team as my second pitcher. Wanted to go cheap with your SP2, I would probably consider like Carlos Rodon at the $6,700 just because he's cheap. He's last year he was pretty bad and got blown up a lot. He had a good spring if you think that means anything, but um, the Mariners aren't the best lineup. They have a couple guys that look appealing like Haniger as a potential one-off, but that would be the third guy that I would consider as my SP2. And going to catcher options, it's basically Grandal at the top if you want it to go all the way up. It's Posey in the mid-range as a value at $3,800. And then it's Mercedes, who's had an unbelievable start to the season against a lefty. He should be in the lineup again. Those are the three main catchers I'm kind of considering. And then always, whenever starting lineups come out, you could get a cheap catcher that looks more appealing. First base, there's a lot of options here. You can go all the way up to Jose Abreu. His numbers against lefties are crazy. He looks really good against Sheffield if you wanted to pay all the way up at first base. The second hitter would be Eric Hosmer going up against Escalfini. Really bad against lefties. Hosmer would be the most appealing Padre just based on the fact that he's one of the only lefties in the lineup. Matt Moore, the Mets, Pete Alonso, looks really appealing against the lefty and Matt Moore. He would be the third high-end first base option I'd consider. And then looking at cheaper options at this position, you have a lot of guys in the 3K range like Yuli Gurriel, who's had a great start to the season. He's been hitting lefties really well over the past few years, and he's gotten off to a really hot start this season with already a home run. He's hit I think 4 hits already in the first series. Looking at his splits, for this season, it's only been like 8 at bats against lefties. He has 4 hits in them, including a double and a home run. Back in 2020, batted .290 with 4 bombs and just 62 at bats against lefties, which was good for a .274 ISO. Only struck out 7% of the time as well against lefties, and he's facing off against the one in I believe Jose Quintana, who does give up quite a bit of good amount of power to right-handed bats, and you're getting a lot of righties in this lineup for the Houston Astros. So Gurriel is based on his price tag, based on the fact that he does give you some pop, is one of my favorite cheap options to go with. You can go with Jake Cronenworth, 3,400 if you wanted to stack up the Padres today. And then for value, it's basically Yoshi Togutsko at $2,900. Cheap, probably will bat leadoff today and gives you some power. And then Andrew Vaughn would be the cheapest guy I would consider. $2,500 going up against a lefty in Sheffield. Gives you some power. One of their top rookie in the organization, top prospect in the organization. Second base, it's Altuve is the top pay-up option. The second guy would be probably Brandon Lau, just because Pivetta can give up some bombs and he gives you a lot of power. The third guy would be like Keston Hiura. He does have great numbers against Williams in his career. He has 3 home runs off of him. And then for some cheaper options at second base, it would be like Kike Hernandez. If he bats leadoff again against Michael Wacha, it would be Cronenworth just because he's a lefty against Descalfini, who gives up a lot of power against lefties. And I like Donovan Solano. He's only $3,200. Gives you a lot of upside. Even though he doesn't give you a ton of power, just because he gets on base, he hits for a very, very high average, and he just hits lefties really, really well. He's gotten off to a great start to the season. So far, he's had already had 5 hits in 8 at bats against lefties, 625 average. 2020, he batted a very nice 350 against lefties. As you see, he doesn't give you a ton of power, but he gives you the ability to get on base, score some runs, maybe hit an RBI or 2. And he's really cheap at just 3,200, so he looks appealing. Even back in 2019, he hit lefties really well, 339. He gave you 3 home runs there. And overall in his career, it's 280, but over the last few seasons, he's been, ever since 2019, he's turned into a really different hitter, and against lefties, he's been crushing. So $3,200 going up against lefty in the Padres. I expect him to be able to probably hit you value and probably bat second in the lineup. So he's a nice value piece that I'm considering. And then last couple cheaper options you can look to are Madrigal at 3,100 if you wanted to stack up the White Sox. Third base, it's Manny Machado at the top end if you wanted to pay up, even though I would rather have him face off against a lefty. I would rather go Bregman as my top pay up at third base just because he's facing off against lefties and he has great numbers against left-handed pitchers in his career. So I will go Bregman as my favorite, then Rendon, then Machado if I had to rank them. Not really interested in Turner just because he's expensive. I'd rather go to some guys that give you a little bit more pop and have some better matchups. You have Devers, $5,200. The Boston Red Sox looking like they're on the. Well, I mean, they got kind of embarrassed in the first series against the Orioles. Got swept by Baltimore. They aren't. I mean, they probably will score some runs at some times this year, but their offense did not look very nice in that opening series. I would probably consider Going down to like Moncada, he's a lot better against right-handed pitchers, but still like him at that price tag at only 4,700. And then you have Evan Longoria, who's gotten off to another good start to the season. Longoria also hits lefties really well, and I don't know if the Giants will get a lot of ownership on this slate because they don't have a high total and people just probably don't like to play them a lot. But I don't mind going to some of these lefty mashers like Longoria, Flores, Slater, and then like Solano, who hits lefties really well. So far this season for Longoria, he's batting 3 for 4 against lefties with 2 bombs. 2020, he batted at 308 against lefties with 3 home runs. 2019, he batted 286 with 6 home runs. This gives you a lot of power against lefties. So Longoria at $3,800 is a nice cheap guy to consider. Shortstop, it is Tatis, Seager. A lot of good payups at the position. It would probably be Seager's my favorite than Tatis. And then I would go down to like a Baez at 5,200 or a Lindor at only 4,800. Other guys that look appealing are definitely like Lindor at 48 going up against a lefty. He hits lefties well. He's cheap compared to some of his other studs at the top. And then you can go with like Tim Anderson at 51. If he's in the lineup, it looks really good against lefties. Moving on to the outfield spot, a couple guys I like. One guy is Gerald Walsh at 3,900 just because he's cheap. He's projected about second in the lineup for the A's here. It's a good spot. They had A's. The Angels have about a 5-run total today, and Walsh had 2 bombs yesterday. But the reason is that he's has some power against has some good power against right-handed pitchers, and I do think he can do some damage compared to some of the other price tags on the team. I think he's one of my favorites. Like him and Trout are always appealing. Well, Trout's always appealing. Walsh today, just because he's under 4K, gives you some upside. 2020, he batted 277 against righties, but he had 8 bombs and just 65 at bats, so that was good enough for a monstrous 462 ISO. Only struck out 12.5% of the time, and he hit the ball in the air a lot. 44% fly ball rate and a 42% hard hit rate for Walsh. Going up against a righty here from the Astros, who doesn't have very much experience. I believe he just made 1 start last year, or maybe 2 starts, but he's the cheapest pitcher on the board. He gave you some solid, very good spring. He had over 7-run ERA in spring, so definitely can look to some of these Angels here going up against Houston. And then last but not least, I do like the White Sox, and with some uncertainty with some of these other guys, with like Anderson questionable if he plays, I'd like him a lot. Go ahead and put in Luis Robert. Luis Robert, I think Robert is the correct pronunciation. He's 5,300, so he's expensive, but I like him a lot more than some of these other studs at the top. Like you can always go with Yelich or Bellinger or Trout, but I expect those guys to have a lot more ownership than a guy like Robert. And he just gives you so much power. He is going to have a tremendous career in MLB. Just gives you so much upside. 5-tool prospect. Looking at his numbers uh, so far in 2021, small sample. He has 1 hit against lefty and 2 at-bats. Last year, he batted 273 against lefties with a couple of home runs. He had a 182 ISO, only a 17% K rate, so struck out a lot less, got on base a lot more. The walks were higher, hit the ball hard 30% of the time, and he had a 44.5% fly ball rate. So he hits the ball in the air a lot. Going up against a lefty here in Sheffield, I just expect Robert to do some damage. And hopefully bats like either sometimes he bats like 7th in the lineup, which isn't great, but if they're missing like Anderson today, he could bat like at least in the above half of the lineup going up against a lefty. And that's basically it for the DraftKings side for what I like on baseball today. Let's look at FanDuel. FanDuel, pitcher option starts with DeGrom is 11K. He's a lot more expensive than any other pitcher, but I just have confidence that he's going to be the best pitcher by far on the slate. Like, you could go with Dustin May. He's only 68 if you wanted to go cheaper and pay up for a stack to be different. But I think you can easily make your lineup work by going up with DeGrom, so that's what I will do. Catcher slash first base. You have a lot of guys here. I will spend down because like going to Grammy leaves you with about 3,000 for your bets. You have a lot of guys that are cheap that look appealing here. It starts with like Wilson Contreras, Yasmani Grandal. Both of those guys are appealing. Cronenworth is appealing at $2,900. I like Yuli Gurriel still at $2,800. Go ahead and put him in. Really good numbers against lefties. He's gone off to a good start to the season. You could go with I believe Jared Walsh is also first base eligible. He's only $2,200. He also looks really, really good. I'll put him in my utility. Just get a guy with power. Projected about like second on Fantasy Labs. He's projected about fifth here on FanDuel. Whatever the case, he should be batting in the top half of the lineup with a lot of power, and especially against righties. So Gurriel and Walsh are the two that I really like that are cheap. And if you wanted to pay up, it's always for Jose Abreu whenever he faces off against lefties. Hosmer looks appealing. Pete Alonso looks appealing as well. Second base, it is Jose Altuve. If you wanted to pay up here, he has really good numbers against lefties for his career. He's gotten off to a good start to the season. I like him more than Muncy, a little bit more than Dylan Moore today. You could go down for like a Brendan Lau at 3,300. I like Solano still on both sides at 3K. On FanDuel, Cronenworth looks good at $2,900. And then Ian Happ, if he bats leadoff, the Cubs total is climbing. As I make this video, they're up to 5 runs now. The wind is blowing out in Wrigley, and that is mainly the guys that I will consider. I don't think you need to go super cheap. Third base, I like Alex Bregman. Go with another guy that's facing off against the lefty in Quintana. Quintana gives up a lot of power to righties. Bregman, unbelievable good start to the season, batting 500 with 2 bombs already. He has multiple hits in all 3 of the games against Oakland, and that was in that ballpark. Now he's going up against the Angels. Still a pitcher-friendly ballpark, but it's still not as bad as a Coliseum. Gurriel, Bregman are the 2 that I really want to get to. On Houston side, Altuve is the 3rd. And then in the outfield, go ahead with a value piece, and that's going to be Jackie Bradley. He is only $2,300 going up against the Cubs here. Trevor Williams was really bad against lefties back in 2019. He gave up a 335 average and a 561 slugging. Last year, he was still bad against lefties, but he was also really bad against righties. But career-wise, he's been a lot worse to lefties in terms of average. The xFIP is over 5 to lefties. Strikeouts are only 14.8%. So on this Brewers team, I want to get to some of these lefty hitters. They have a lot of them in the lineups. They would be an appealing stack, like Colton Wong, Shaw, especially Yelich, Jackie Bradley as just a cheap play. So on FanDuel, where he's only 2,300, he looks appealing, especially if he bats fifth in lineup. And that's still easy with 3,000 left for your remaining hitter. So I think we did a good job of using some value and using some studs to fill out this 5 players that I like. So that's it for the baseball video. We're going up on 18 minutes now. So thank you guys for watching. Best of luck today. Drop a like if you guys enjoyed the videos, and I'll see you all next time.